Welcome, gentle listener, I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the factions, forces and faces of the Warhammer 40k setting, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace. There is only time for war. Now, as usual, I shall be providing a little tale to whet the appetite, then progress on to the hard details of the lore, before summing up with my own thoughts on the information presented. And so, on to the wee yarn. Story continued from Ulik the Unreasonable playlist. Tarax and Tarax. Another siege. Another nut to be cracked. But this time, the shoe was on the other foot. The most important siege of all time had been broken. Horus was dead, and the Loyalists were out for blood. They chased us. Oh, how they chased us. Yet, they were so easily goaded. Time and again, I had led them into charnel fields, and I enjoyed every last second of it. I didn't mind attacking, of course. That had its moments. But the butchery one can met out when on the defensive. It brings a glow to my heart to think of those days. The veterans were troublesome. Those who had actually survived the heresy and the Crusade before it. They fought like true Astartes should. Without restraint, but with caution and precision. The rabble they used to plump out their numbers were drafted, given basic training, then pushed onto the battlefield. Times were hard. Now usually I like a challenge, but after Terra, we needed a palate cleanser, and butchering inductii was a pure pleasure. We buggered off from the siege early, we Iron Warriors. Perturabo just packed up and left. So we had plenty of time to set up our strongholds, to gird our battlements for a bit of payback. Eventually, I got so good at watching Loyalist movements, I could pick my adversaries. Usually. The Shattered Legions were experts in this kind of war. Their experience counted more than even battle barges. They were ghosts. They struck us with impunity. The wolves also were a force of nature, as pure in its rage as we were corrupted in ours. The Dark Angels were horrors, who meted out defeat after defeat. So, I avoided the paths of all those. The Blood Angels, the White Scars, and of course, the Imperial Fists. Those were more gratifying by far to kill. When we tore them asunder while giving pointless ground on planets we never intended to hold, we bled them again and again. To my own. I culled the worst of the god-botherers, kept my flotillas and forces disciplined, dedicated and hungry. I kept order, even in the scouring. We remained a force of Astartes, as much as we could ever be. Many had blessings, but few were avert. We kept it that way. And it paid off in mounds of Loyalist dead. And I grew as a commander, as a general. I learned to value what I had previously considered worthless. Dreadnoughts. Even the misshapen. For those I gained most respect of all. The Deredeo. An ugly thing, even by the time's standards. Most of the precious assets had been expunged in the charge for Terra, the siege. Yet we three had retained our forces. We three had separately saved the majority of our good men. The Triumvirate as we were known. Myself, Ulick, and Hexamon. I had kept my largest pieces off the board. I had raised more inductii than any other Iron Warrior, had burned through more than most. I had shown willing, done my part. But I had saved my heavy assets, my best elites, my core. So, hilariously, when the Loyalists arrived, we outgunned them. We hit them with weapons their rookies had never even heard of. And the shock was doubled when they met my elite corps, and we punished them mightily with such weaponry. Ah, the Deredeo. 2 memories immediately spring to mind. Hexamon's Era and Tridentis 7. Hexamon, he always took dreadnoughts lightly, as I once did, but I respected the machine, if not the man who rode inside it. Hexamon did not. On this particular day, he was leading from the front again, so I am told. So he carved his way to those who might prove worthy of his blade. His command squad were ravening madmen all, irritating door for the position due to the high casualty rate. Hexamon retained assets, but they were not his guard. They died like flies. Hexamon had broken into the last lines of defence on a siege, with a wall of destroyers and despoilers at his back. Salamanders. They died hard. They always did. But they died. But Hexamon had to goad the last dreadnought pilot, a Deredeo. He taunted it as he danced around its blind spots, outpacing it, throwing grenades at it to distract it. He was playing, but he slipped, and he fell. And the Deredeo swung round and shot at him, and missed him. But the las cannon blast was so close, it burned off half his face. The half that never regrew. Hexamon rolled. He turned and ducked past the guns and tore the top off it with his power sword. He pulled out the dying pilot, and he, Hexamon, took unsavoury revenges. But who am I to judge my brother? He knows what strikes fear into men. He wages a different war to me. I do not question. I applaud. I remind myself of this constantly, for I see the change in him since he merged. He holds the whip hand. He is still Hexamon. But the other pushes him to excess, to greatness or demise. I cannot tell. I can but trust in my brother Hexamon. I do not question. He has mastered a warp entity. He draws strength from it at his will. I do not question. I applaud. Hexamon now smiles all of the time, but I find it reassuring rather than distracting. He wears his humility on his face. He reaches for the very top. Only then will he rectify his visage. I do not question. Any more than he would question my denial of such potency. He does not question. Like me about he, we know. Yet, staggeringly to all but we three, Ulick is the glue. It isn't the same without him. Neither I nor Hexamon can say the same about each other, as close as we actually are. But it is Ulick, the unreasonable one, even with us. Even sometimes with us too, his brothers. But at least he will listen, eventually. Yet of all of us, he was the one who harvested most from the retreat from Terre. His army swelled time and again. He knew his aim stayed constant, patient, deliciously spiteful. While others ran from, he moved toward. He blazed across the outer reaches, previously untouched by the war. They were not prepared. He fell on them like a jackal of legend. He razed key long-range naval dockyards first, hit commercial hubs as well. He grew his fleet as often as he could. Key naval units were withdrawn from his path after a year of this pattern, because his spear tip would be battle barges, which then took as many ships as possible. Their squads were then pounded into oblivion. But he was also gaining exterminatus-grade resources. Gene stock whenever he could take it. Weaker Forge World satellites. He recruited those who would bend the knee. Slaughtered everyone else. Hoarded massive stocks of slaves. He was building an army to match his growing armada. But he was not above joint operations, like Tridentis 7. Another time we fought together. One of the best times I can remember. Imperial fists, blood angels. Ha! The old duo. By the powers did we butcher them that day. I did not attend the Iron Cage. This was before then. But I like to think that this was mine own iteration on that work of art. Tridentis 7. We'd set it up for 6 months and more. Dropped evidence, fumbled messages, been sloppy with jumps. Shown them where we were. A tale of broken worlds with arrows of evidence all pointing to Tridentis. Hexamon and I had thrown a few battles, allowed the Loyalists to capture a few units of rookies. They sang like it was written by Beckwick Kinsker herself, a song of our fortress about to go online, but not quite finished. Of course not. Maybe they thought we were tired, pushed to desperation by the long war, broken. Exactly as we wanted them to think. Yet, if they had not believed, they would not have come. So, we added a large smattering of truly egregious sackings of worlds to gain their attention and rile them up. And so the bull of fire and ice charged us. The berserker blood angels and the cold warriors of Inuit, with the fires of retribution, ran now no less hot in the sons of Rogel. Their sub-fleet erupted into the system and came on, all guns blazing. They found and chased off a rabble of lesser escorts, surrounding a single-strike cruiser of mine. But we also left a gaggle of transports floating about in high orbit, like we had exodus down to the planet, and then scuppered our ships. Beaten. They came in and pounded away at our overlapping void shield arrays planet side. But the one location, we made it impregnable from anything that could be thrown at us from on high. But we knew they would not destroy the planet. They wanted to wipe us out, wanted to wade knee-deep in our dead and crush our skulls beneath their marching boots. So, this was, to them, simply a gift from the gods, as planned. They gave up on their orbital bombardment and came down to eradicate us root and stem. They arrayed their forces for a single crushing final assault. I had to fight a chortle when they signalled the advance. For that is when the lesson began in earnest. They unleashed hell on our walls, but I had planned this down to the nth degree. Specific segments of shielding went down under the sustained pressure. Then, of course, the walls in that region were pounded to ashes. Our defences broken, the Loyalists began their assault. Now it had taken all of my formidable reserves of patience to remain steady. We lost 3 heavy emplacements before they even hit our lines. I ground my teeth as each was lost, but I stuck it out. We were weak, destitute in energy and ammunition. It had to be this way for them to do what I hoped, what I planned. But when our guns did not open up and blaze scores of them from the galaxy, when they were clearly within range, it emboldened them. They sent in their second and third waves before the first had even hit. The armour being in the first wave, of course. The jump troops in the second. But when their rhinos barked and shot forward as one, then I knew I had them. Their reserve was small, their encampment now denuded. This is when a single flare rose into the air at my command, so much like the job site massacre. I then gave the order, and just as our lines were reached, our guns whirred into life and began cutting them down in their droves. The Loyalist armour hit our walls, the broken segments, and ploughed right into the second lines I had so lovingly put together for them. We were brothers after all, so I did not want to give them anything but our very best reception. I had ensconced entire squads of heavy and support fire, entire banks of Volkite culverins, calivers, support troops awaiting them, las cannon armed squads aplenty, dotted across those regions as well. The land raiders were concentrated down. Any who escaped the melting coffins were exterminated. When their assault troops breached, they took to the airs and their jump packs. This is when I revealed my best gift to my Loyalist brothers. For out stomped a dozen Deredeo Dreads in talons. They got into position and then halted and diverted power to their arrays. The advanced tracking systems factored every last blip or blob in the skies, and their missiles then streaked into said skies. And it was raining red-clad warplate from then on in. The Blood Angels fell from the skies like meteors. The Deredeos then used their Armament cannons and opened up on the last and most valiant of the assault transports. Spartans, Phobos and Proteus pattern land raiders, and rhinos were wrecked by their las cannon banks. Hellfire plasma covered the approaches, steering and melting all caught in the legs. Anvilous autocannon fire racked the ground and skies. While the fists and the angels died, Hexamon came out of cover. He led wings of speed as some flyers out of hiding and slaughtered the command and reserve forces. By the time the Loyalists knew what was happening, Hexamon and his Emperor's children were already appearing at their rear. It was hilarious. Caught between the forces, the Loyalists split. The Angels retreated, tried to take on the Emperor's children under Hexamon, and were annihilated. The Fists, they were cunning, so they thought. They sought to take our holding from us, and then use it to defend against the armies of Hexamon. They took us too lightly, and their desperation to enter my keep made them frantic, sloppy. So when we withdrew again, they followed us swiftly enough. Yet they ran into another trap. A walled region filled with murder holes. They chased us, only to thump against reinforced shielded doors. And then we tore them apart. The Deredeos were even more lethal at point-blank range. My lads all grinned as I gave that rare order they all so enjoyed. Fix bayonets! And they did. Chain bayonets. And then I ceased the firing, and we went to town. Our battle line squads then burst from sally ports and went straight into whatever was left. Nothing survived. But of course, none of this would have been for aught if Ulrich had not played the greatest part in the play. For as we smashed the Loyalist planet side, his fleet swung around a moon and ploughed into the Loyalist ships. In low orbit, in bombardment and support positions, they were sitting ducks for Ulrich's gunners, and he boarded and blasted their fleet into submission. As above, so below. The fists and angels were annihilated, their seed harvested, their materials of war garnered for our hungry forces. In the end, again, by working together, we all profited mightily, and the Deredeos I placed in stasis, used them rarely in all these millennia. I want to keep them as they are. I did not want them to shift and twist into some kind of hell brute. I want to keep them as they are. My beautiful, horrific Deredeo Dreadnoughts. To be continued. Now, gentle listener, let us get to the bones of the matter. We know how lethal these things are now, but what are they? A Deredeo pattern is, like all dreadnoughts, a walking tomb. At the core of each of these high-tech walkers is a sarcophagus unit. There the main space marine is interned into a sac of amniotic fluid and artificially kept alive, sometimes for millennia. Yet around this sac and its systems are the makings of a monster. Created in only few forge worlds, even during the height of the Great Crusade, the Deredeo is made of rare and resilient materials, and has even more rarefied operating systems. Its weaponry and defences are from the dark age of technology, and even at the Imperium's material and technological zenith, they were uncommon in the extreme. Not as rugged or durable as a Leviathan, nor as easily generated or supplied and supported as a Castroferum pattern, nor as versatile as a Contemptor. The Deredeo, for all its woes, had a very specific role indeed, and it excelled at it. For the Deredeo Dreadnought does not mix and match between close quarters and ranged encounters. It is not a jack of all trades. The Deredeo is one thing and one thing only. It is a walking fire platform par excellence. Where most dreadnoughts had hands, power fists, or siege drills at the end of their arms, the Deredeo has no arms at all. It is a torso, a pair of legs to perambulate, and it is firepower. Above its shoulders are two huge rocket packs. Its main appendages, where its arms should be, are two huge weapons of utter annihilation. But now, for the very basics, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote: History. The Deredeo pattern dreadnought was developed during the Great Crusade for use by the Space Marine legions. This pattern was developed as an outgrowth of the same project to improve upon the fusion of Terra and Mechanicum technology, which gave birth to the first Legiones Astartes dreadnoughts, such as the Castroferum and Lucifer patterns. It shares many core components and systems with a hugely successful Contemptor class, but rather than a general assault unit, the Deredeo is an exceptionally designed heavy weapons platform, intended to combine superior firepower with the flexibility and durability of a dreadnought chassis. Deployed in limited numbers for each of the legions, the Deredeo was treated as a specialist unit, as it proved highly resource-intensive to produce and maintain. But its undoubted survivability and killing power saw a resurgence in its use after the initial wave of internecine conflict during the outbreak of the Horus Heresy, and it was in high demand by traitor and loyalist alike from the few forge worlds that produced this rare pattern. Armament. The Deredeo was designed purely for range support. The Deredeo pattern Dreadnought, with its formidable carrying capacity and battlefield stability, was used as a testbed platform for a number of advanced Legiones Astartes weapon systems, created from the Wisdom 1 during the Great Crusade. The standard loadout for the Deredeo consisted of a set of twin-linked Anvilus pattern autocannons, known as the Anvilus Autocannon Battery, and a set of carapace-mounted twin-linked heavy bolters. The heavy bolters could be replaced with a set of twin-linked heavy flamers, and an Iolus missile launcher could be mounted atop its carapace. Chief amidst its anti-vehicle armaments were the Arachnus Heavy Lascannon Battery. The Deredeo could also be outfitted with smoke launchers, a searchlight, and extra ceramite plating. The Deredeo shares the Contemptor pattern system of defensive energy field generators inside its armored plating, and is powered by the enhanced atomantic power core within. But it also had a helical targeting array. The helical targeting array features a series of highly sophisticated combat cogitators that allows the walker to track even the swiftest of enemy craft with ease. While the targeting array is indeed powerful, due to the delicacy of the array's internal components and its ravenous consumption of power, the Dreadnought must remain completely immobile while the system is in operation. The array is capable of tracking multiple enemy targets at once and is linked directly to the Deredeo's deadly anti-air weapons. Now the Anvilus autocannon batteries could and were replaced with other weaponry. Such examples are the Arachnus Lascannon Battery, the Hellfire Plasma Cannonade, and the Volkite Falconet Battery. Each an advanced, augmented version of the base forms, so an Arcanus Lascannon was able to do approximately double the internal damage of a normal Lascannon, and so it was with all the versions set on this beast. Yet there is more. For the Deredeo could also be armed with an augmented shield, called an Atomantic Pervase. The Atomantic Pervase was a highly experimental carapace-mounted energy shield system that was used during the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy era. The Atomantic Pervase was developed by the clave Nuathak, subcult Magos of the Forge world of Anvilus, with Zone Immortalis operations in mind. With the idea of turning the Deredeo Dreadnought into a mobile bulwark against the heaviest enemy weapons' fire. This reinforced shield increases the Deredeo's own formidable armor and shielding, and provides protection to nearby friendly units. End quote. And so, we get to the commentary section. For not much need more be explained. It walks forward. It plants itself into the ground. It brings its helical targeting array online. Then it unleashes unfettered death. But the Deredeo... I do not have one yet. It may happen with the promised new Horus Heresy box from Games Workshop. But, gentle listener, there is a reason I've never wanted one previously. Because, I must admit, the thing scares the willies out of me. Now all know I truly adore the darkly macabre setting of most of its horrors. The grim darkness is a vibrant setting, despite that its tone control is set so very darkly. Yet, for me, the Deredeo is just that touch too much so. Or it has been. But why, oh follically disadvantaged one, does this thing in particular give you the Wiggins? You've regaled us with dark lullabies from the very courts of Cormorah. You've identified that the Dark Angels interrogators are the Marines you fear the most. You've sung your songs of dark horror for nearly 4 years. Why this one? Why the Deredeo? The reason is simple. Childish mayhap, but I am both blessed and cursed with a vivid imagination. and the Deredeo is one of the most inhuman and inhumane things in the armies of humanity, at least of the Crusade era. And look at what they did to the Ogrin in the Great Crusade as a close competitor, or the horror of servitordom. But the Deredeo is, at present, my bugbear. The inhumanity of the Deredeo is something that does actually intimidate me. Look at it. Just really look at it. Now, while doing that, remember that deep inside the thing is a scarred and barely living Marine. Then look at it again. It has no arms. It has no hands. It has no way of interacting with the universe around it in any beneficial way whatsoever. Now, one might state this about any walking tomb that is dubbed a dreadnought, but let me cast another vision for you. At least when the wars are over, the dreadnought pilot can build. He can shift tons of materials and piles of girders in minutes. He can assist in the creation of defenses to guard his brethren. He can pick things up to look at them closer. He can open a door. Now imagine that you only have guns for arms. You can do nothing but walk and kill. Each time you reach out, a hellfire plasma ball, a missile or a las cannon explosion will do the caressing. What happens if you fall and cannot risk your weaponry while righting yourself? How humiliating. To be a lord of war is one thing. If you can feed yourself, clothe yourself, write your memoirs, see the sun. Yet, in this, the Deredeo, the caged marine gives up all final vestiges of their humanity and must surely just become an avatar of war. It is not a fate I would wish even on an enemy. It is not a future I would choose for anyone, let alone a defender of humanity. An honorable, courageous, altruistic warrior of humanity. To become the pilot of a Deredeo Dreadnought. It is not right. And it is certainly no fate for a space marine. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. I hope you have enjoyed this brief introduction to the Deredeo Dreadnought. Now do hit the links in the description to see our other channel, Living Mythology. And of course, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.